The reality is, for just about probably every city, your biggest bang for your buck is going to be social media. I don't ever see that metric changing. Even if it comes down a little bit and other avenues come up, I think that is still going to be the big thing.
Welcome to Modern Gov Matters. I'm Sarah Lloyd, and this show is all about honest conversations with public sector communicators about what's actually working, what's not, and the stuff that keeps you up at night. Modern Gov Matters is presented by Civil, powered by Social News Desk. Today, I'm talking with Chris Shadrock, Communications Director and Head of Civic Engagement for the city of Boerne, Texas. Chris spent a decade in journalism before moving into government communications, and he's back home in the Hill Country community where he grew up. He's instrumental in keeping residents informed, turning complex government topics into language people can actually understand, and he's got some big plans brewing for Boerne in 2027. Chris, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
You mentioned before we started that after 6 years, you've finally gotten to a place where you're rarely putting out fires anymore, and most government communicators I talk to are in constant crisis mode. So how did you get there?
I think some of it is a combination of the work that we've been doing, but also I think the makeup of our community. We're in a really fortunate spot that we don't have a whole lot of crises. Our city itself is all of 12 square miles and 24,000 people. And I do think we're kind of right at that right size where we can do some really great work still, and we can still do some of the cool things that you might expect in a bigger city, but we just don't have some of the same day-to-day challenges that, being just outside San Antonio, a city of almost 1.5 million people, see every single day. So that has definitely been, I think, two kind of driving factors of why we are, I think, like I said, in that sweet spot of not having to deal with the day-to-day crises. So I filled out that survey just the day before one of the more historic modern floods here in the city of Boerne, and it has felt a little bit like a crisis, but it's also been, even in the moments that I can reflect back on it, obviously nobody had this in our bingo card for 2026 and having to deal with all of these things. So all of that said, we've still been able to kind of fit that in while not completely abandoning our work plans and our goals that we've set out to kind of keep progressing both the city as well as our department.
Yeah, and I was going to mention, you guys just dealt with another generational flood after we just had one in this area same time last year, pretty much. So yeah, how did that fit into, your overall comms plan? Obviously, it wasn't part of the plan, but how did that fit into kind of the comms strategy that you guys have laid down for this year?
I think part of it, and I would say it isn't even so much this year, but the element of we always knew that this day was coming. Especially growing up out here, and anybody who's been in the Texas Hill Country long enough, we know we live in Flash Flood Alley. I was born and raised in the San Antonio area. We can mark, the flood of 97, 98, 02, 2015, and now 2026 in Boerne. So we know that this is not a never going to happen type of scenario. It's always a matter of when it's going to happen. So for us, that has been one of the key focuses, specifically within my own work plans. In my role as the director, I've done more of the crisis communications training. I've done the master PIO certification training. So all of those things to know that inevitably this day is going to come in some capacity. And so being able to just kind of fit that in was just a matter of like, okay, we've got it. We have the bandwidth, we have the capacity. And even though between myself and my two teammates here, Robert and Bria, we had never fully experienced it on this side of our work spectrum, I honestly feel like we crushed it. We did a really great job. Everybody knew what they were going to do, and there was no second guessing it. Everybody was just like, let's go forth and conquer. And I feel like we did that.
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like, laying the groundwork, doing all that prep work, getting the certifications, just really helped you guys have a little bit more smooth sailing during, what could have been a destructive and loss of life type of event. But I know you guys came through it okay. So it sounds like you guys have a little bit more breathing room, and you're actually planning some really ambitious things for 2027. You mentioned a new signature park, the city's largest mobility project in history, and of course, Boerne's 175th anniversary all in 1 year. So how are you thinking about telling those stories together, and how are you managing that communications load?
Well, the planning has already started now, as you can imagine. You can't have these types of signature events and, the biggest in city history type events and then just expect that you're going to wake up the week before and plan it. So
Right.
it's definitely a lot of the pre-planning that goes into it, but there's definitely some opportunities for some overlap, especially for both the signature park as well as celebrating the city's 175th anniversary. The ribbon cutting is taking place in the spring, and we've already talked about how we're actually going to combine an element of both of those things because in our 175 years, we've never had a park and this much green space dedicated at one time. Being able to kind of, celebrate that moment at such a signature time in our city's history is a really great thing to be able to do.
Yeah, it's amazing timing, right?
Yes, it worked out really well. And as for the road project, yeah, like that one is just going to be a lot of the lessons that I've learned in the past 6 years being here. We've done some of the smaller projects and, that maybe impact 10 houses. And so from that, being able to talk to maybe some of those residents and those neighbors and or hear things that like, hey, this worked really well, but maybe this didn't work as well. So as we're getting ready to redo this entire 2 stretch mile of road, that's a very critical east-west junction point for not only our residents, but also our first responders. The sheriff's office is over there off of Adler Road. Kendall County EMS uses that to get to the other side of the county very quickly. So we know how important that is, and being able to know that we also have the capacity to go out there and really hold the hand of the residents and say, here's what we're going to do. Have a lot of those pre-meetings, have a lot of that community input. We're really getting to that point now where we're talking about starting to plan. We need to talk to them, even though we're only at like the 60 to 65% design phase, and say, how do y'all want us to handle this? Really weigh in on the folks that are going to be impacted every single day because they live next to it, but also managing the realities of we are reconstructing a major road while you're living next to it. That's never going to be easy. And so it's never going to be smooth and seamless. So what do we need to do? How do we need to make sure that they understand what's going to happen so they are also prepared for what is coming?
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to my next question. You mentioned something that really stuck with me, and that's how Bernie's moving away from those formal town halls and toward more organic in-person gatherings. So, can you tell me a little bit about that shift?
I would think in talking to some other communicators, and it's something we all see. And I think what we're finally getting at, and it's kind of starting with the millennial generation. We were the first group of people that know a life before social media. And then now we know the life post social media. And when we all started, social media was fun. It's like, oh, look at my dinner or look at my kid's birthday party. And now it's evolved to what it is. And it still plays a really important role. But what we also know, based off of the research that we're seeing, is people have social media fatigue. The younger generation isn't even really latching onto it the way our generation did. So when you start hearing some of this data and the statistics and you start recognizing that, for the last several years, it's been, we'll put it on Facebook and people will know. And that there's certainly a good audience that will learn the information, but starting to think about the intentionality of how it is we're reaching people. And especially because, again, the research also tells us the social media algorithm that changes all the time, but it's really designed to elicit a reaction out of us. And that reaction is usually not a positive one. If there's a negative post, if there's a negative thing, let's tackle on. And that's what they're going to elevate. That's what they're going to promote and boost into other people's profiles. What I have found, especially again, Bernie is still a small enough town that I can go down on Main Street. I can have dinner. I'm probably going to run into somebody I know, or if they know what I do, they're going to want to ask me a question. And I'm glad to answer both of those things. So what we're starting to really do, and it started really with this renaming of our department. It used to just be communications, but now it's communications and civic engagement. We're really
Mhm.
starting to talk about that intentionality of the engagement with our residents, and it's going to look different. It's going to be things where I'm part of, like I said, a run club that just started, and I happen to be out there, and I'm very fortunate. I have a dog that does not understand the meaning of personal space, and she wants a free pet or a free anything from anybody that will give it to her. Well, that forces the natural introvert in me to have to go talk to somebody. Oh, I'm so sorry. And then the conversation goes. And what I have found in doing that is you have that natural conversation with people. You're meeting people in real life and just seeing them for the person that's in front of you at that moment. And there's always that natural, well, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I work for the city of Burning communications and outreach. And then they just start asking questions, and it's very informal. And in all of these conversations, nobody's gotten mad. Nobody's gotten upset. Everybody walks away with, that's some good information. That's good context and better understanding of what's going on. And so to be able to kind of provide that to them, I'm seeing kind of the proof in the pudding, if you will, that this is how folks really want to be met. And it is a lot more intentional. It's a lot more curated. I feel like, Mahjong is the new thing right now that has taken off. And I wouldn't be surprised if I end up in a Mahjong class just saying, I'm with the city of Bernie. I'm going to join you all today. But if you've got any questions, feel free to ask me. And it's going to be in that type of situation, in that setting where it takes not only the pressure, I think, off of our elected officials to always feel like they're only getting the bad emails and the bad outreach from folks who are maybe upset, but it's just getting folks on a normal day when maybe they weren't thinking they were going to learn something new, and then they jump in and lean into that opportunity.
I'm going to have to invite you to my Mahjong group. And I can tell you that people will probably be less receptive to your good ideas if you start winning all the time. So you might have to temper your skill level a little bit.
Trust me, I
Just
don't
from
think
my
I'm any
personal
good.
experience. All right. Yeah. So just to shift gears a little bit, let's talk a little bit about what's not working. Before the show, you mentioned the website bloat problem. So putting everything online just to say it's available, but it's making the site clunkier, creating ADA compliance issues. So walk me through that tension. What's the actual problem that you're trying to solve there?
Yeah, well, I think just like every other municipality, government entity, we have these new ADA requirements that we know are coming down the pipe. So I think that's what started this conversation several years ago, knowing that the deadline was coming. It has since been pushed back 1 year for everybody, but it's inevitable. So you really have to start rethinking what is the goal of your website, and if we really think about a website in terms of the lifespan of a city government, Bernie's 175 years old. We've had a website for maybe 25 of those years. And so it's a new thing still in the totality of the city's life. Similar to social media, put it all on social media and it's there. I think the website had that same mindset and ethos for a really long time, but just put it on the website. Now with new rules that are coming in, it's, well, that's not ADA compliant, that's not accessible, but also just like the load times on our website get slowed down because of that. So in a world where folks want things quicker and faster, that's a problem. So it's kind of solving that one problem. You can start now looking at things and saying, okay, in the past 5 years, this web page itself has been clicked on 4 times. Does that need to exist in its own standalone web page, or can that just be incorporated somewhere else? Do we really need it? And what that has sparked the conversation of is, okay, well, if it's not on the website, where does it live and how do you access it? And so that's really the kind of tug of war kind of conversation I know we're having of what does this need to look like? And, the example we saw most recently here in Texas, at least, was the city of Austin. They unveiled their new website. And I think they said it went from like 15,000 pages to like under 2,000, which
Wow.
is astonishing when you hear some of these numbers of like, they really did a deep dive audit of all of these pages. Obviously, I'm under the assumption they had a consultant or they had people on staff that was their whole job. We don't quite have the resources to do that here in Bernie. So it's just us doing it as part of our day to day. But it will be a very interesting to, again, see the shift in the evolution of how we view our digital capacity to do things and see what that actually looks like 5 years from now, because I do think it's going to look really different as we move forward. There will definitely be some heartburn, I think, on all parties involved of what that needs to look like. But I also think that because of that, we're going to end up with a better product.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you decide what kind of makes the cut? Is there kind of a threshold of page views, or is there critical mass of information that this needs to be documented, archived on our website, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I definitely think one of the benchmarks is really going to be is, especially if it's a PDF document type thing, is this ADA compliant? Because if it's not, that inherently is a problem.
Mhm.
So whether that lives in a different format, is it a PDF application for utilities that we're now going to turn into a online fillable format that you just hit submit. Okay, that solves that problem. But yeah, I do think some of those other metrics are going to come in place, and it's going to be part, if nobody's clicking on this webpage, why does it need to live? Can this information go somewhere else? Can we consolidate and incorporate things and really figure out what that right balance is? And some of the stuff is going to live up here, but we might also just have to bite the bullet and say, this just has to live in this format because, and find the workaround.
Yeah. So you told me everything, everything is not full of friction right now. You mentioned that you guys hired a dedicated social media specialist, and that's
Mhm.
made a big difference. How did adding that role change things for you personally, and what did it unlock for your departments?
I think it let us settle into our roles that we're all best at. With my background in journalism, I had done it all. I was an MMJ, I was a reporter, I filled and produced, I was a photographer, I did web and social media. So I knew all of the things. So when I came here to the city, I was doing all of the things. And I was fine doing it. I was like, oh, I've already done this. So what's been interesting is when we added this person at first, I was like, oh gosh, like it's part, I have to let things go. And, you delegate the responsibility to the person who's hired to do that. And that has been, I think, the best part of it is, for as much as I love doing social media and I like having fun with social media posts and fun videos, I also just recognize like I'm out of time. Like, unless I plan on working 12-hour days every day, I just don't have the bandwidth to do this anymore. So being able to gift that to somebody else and have them excel at it and do a really great job, it has really allowed us to, I think, find our strengths and just lean into it. And that really showed up when we had the flood, in the middle of July. That day, I was in the EOC. My team was back here at City Hall. I was feeding them the information. It was getting published and shared, published and shared, published and shared. And by the end of it, my colleague Robert, who's been here for now a little over 5 years, was just like, I am so glad Bree is here, because this is the first time we've had a big, large scale event like this. And everybody had their part. And for us to not have to think about the social media, again, knowing that people are going to be asking questions, looking for more information, we can help get her the information, but she could respond. She could do the updates. It just took such a weight off of us. And it was such a sigh of relief of like, this is awesome. And seeing it like all work out how it is you envision it'll work when it's a big, terrible, crazy, busy day. And then it actually happens. You're like, okay, we're doing good.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I full disclosure, I live in San Antonio, not too far from Bernie, and I definitely remember turning on the news and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's Chris, and you're out there killing it. But yeah, it sounds like having that extra set of hands on social just freed you up so much, and that might help make a case for other cities who are trying to prove to leadership that, hey, we need this person not just for the day to day, but when things hit the fan, this is going to make a huge difference for us.
For sure, because, especially in the smaller towns, everybody's like, is social media a full-time job? And the answer is absolutely.
Yes.
For as much change and evolution as coming to social media, and even knowing that the audience viewing habits is changing and maybe not as many people are joining social media, the reality is, for just about probably every city, your biggest bang for your buck is going to be social media. I don't ever see that metric changing. Even if it comes down a little bit and other avenues come up, I think that is still going to be the big thing. And the last thing you want is on a day like that where, in some cities, maybe you just have one comms person who's trying to do it all, but then maybe you have a police officer or a firefighter who's having to fill in and do the social media on that day. Or maybe it is your incident commander who is trying to lead an incident, but then update social media. Like, it is an intense stress. And to just be able to, again, have somebody whose whole sole focus is that wagon of information and outreach, and have them just do it, just takes your pressure off to then just focus on the immediate thing in front of you, knowing that that element is just handled. And again, it's one of those, initially struggled with it because I was like, I'm so used to it. But now that I've been able to, again, unpack that over time and again, see it in action, it just reinforces that idea more and more that yes, truly understanding social media, understanding the changes that are coming. We all know, like I said, the algorithm changes, it seems every other week. What size image is the right size that they're going to feed the beast to more people. So having somebody who can just think about that and only focus on that is a full-time job. And if you can get the right person who can do it and do it really well, you're going to see the benefits of it.
That's awesome. So, one more question kind of along those lines. If you were starting your current role over from scratch, what is one thing that you'd do differently? It could be a process, a priority, a relationship that you'd invest in earlier, just whatever kind of wisdom you've gained.
I would really merge the marketing and the communication side of things. And really, our marketing is in the visitor center side of things. And that's where they do a ton of outreach, obviously trying to get folks to come stay at hotels, visit the Hill Country Mile, do those things. And while it's a very different world than what I live in, from the outsider looking in who maybe doesn't understand that marketing and communications, they might look very similar, but once you really delve into it, you can see there are some very strong, finite differences in how it is you're going to do both of those roles. I have found that several of the things that we're promoting on the city side, our visitor center is also promoting. For our visitor center out there promoting Dickens on Main or, Vinox Parade during the holidays or any of our car shows, well, I'm going to tell that to my residents too, because I want you to come downtown and enjoy Bernie.
Yeah,
That's why we live
absolutely.
here. We love the city. We love these opportunities. We love these events. So in a perfect world, if I were building from the ground up, I would probably have those living in the same umbrella.
So, you mentioned a little bit about getting residents to come downtown. So, I want to talk a little bit in our lightning round about some of the things you love about Bernie. So, what's your favorite local spot in Bernie?
It's going to be the Cibolo Nature Center. It is a quarter mile from my house, and I can get out there and you're just in the middle of nothing. And you hear the water flowing, the birds are chirping, the trees are growing, and it's just a piece of serenity right in the heart of the hill country.
I'm sensing a theme. I've talked to several other communicators on the podcast, and they always bring up their local nature center where they can go to just have quiet and not hear anybody talk to them. So I'm sensing a little bit of a, hey, you guys need some quiet time.
Yes.
What's the most underrated part of your community?
The most underrated thing that is happening that I think is in Bernie is the Curry Trail. It is on the north side of town. It's our smallest trail. I used to live next to it, but just being able to, again, go out there and it's definitely utilized, but they've got a little gym section. They've got the walking trail. It's a little bit of everything you need, but I definitely think it's kind of the hidden gem.
Love it. And this is always the hardest question for some reason, but if Bernie had a theme song, what would it be?
If Bernie had a theme song, I definitely think it'd be Meanwhile Back at Mama's. I grew up on 90s country, so I was really thinking about this and I had to ponder, but some version of a 90s country. But that one, if you go back and listen, and I think I'm kind of the living, breathing example of that. And I know for all of my classmates that I went to Bernie High School with, when you're a kid, you're like, I can't wait to get out of here. But then every time you'd come home, you're like, oh, this is so great. The nostalgia of it. But then also when you now look at it through the eyes of an adult, I can really understand and respect and appreciate why my parents chose to raise us where they were fortunate to have that opportunity to raise us. It's just, I think Bernie just kind of keeps calling you back. It's just meanwhile back in Bernie. Meanwhile, it just keeps coming back to there's just something very calm and comforting and kind of nostalgic about being back.
I love that. That's beautiful. So, Chris, this has been such a great conversation, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your super busy schedule to spend some time with me. It's been great hearing about how you guys have built a culture where strategy wins over firefighting, and how you guys are rethinking civic engagement and what it actually means for next year. So, thank you again for being here.
Glad to be here.
Modern Gov Matters is presented by Civol, powered by Social News Desk. If you found this episode helpful or interesting, please share it. And for more episodes, visit moderngovmatters.com. I'm Sarah Lloyd, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.